Of the failed projects under the Big Four agenda culminated by ballooning debts, this is what characterizes the Jubilee regime. The Big Four agenda has only been allocated 135 billion Kenya shillings in the final year of its implementation. Time is running out, of course, for President Uhuru Kenyatta. Hello and welcome. This is the special coverage of Budget 2021-2022, the second last budget of President Uhuru Kenyatta, which he is overseeing. Will it be a burdensome year for Kenyans? We have an in-depth analysis of what is in store for us with my able guest, Dr. Abdi Hafid Yaro, who is an economist from the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya. He's also the chairman of ABIBSA. We also have Dr. John Mwaniki, who is the Deputy Governor in Laikipia County, both economists, to tell us and delve into the economy 2021-2022. And we do have a lot lined up for you till 5:30. Keep it here. If you have any question, keep sending your feedback to 111 You can also tweet us at Switch TV Kenya, at Switch TV KE on Instagram, and also on Twitter. You can follow me on Switch TV KE. It's Clifford KE on Twitter. Not forgetting to ask your question regarding the budget 2021-2022. Real fast, let's get into the matters of the day. Let's have a quick look at the key budget highlights of 2021-2022, where a total of 3.66 trillion Kenya shillings will, or rather has been estimated and will be read by Ukur Yatani, who is now the Treasury Cabinet Secretary. And out of the 3.6 trillion Kenya shillings in the 2021-2022 budget, the government now expects to merely raise 2 trillion in total revenues to leave nearly 2 trillion unmatched spending. Now, cumulative expenditure in the 2020-2021 financial year has increased by 4%, representing an additional 75.4 billion Kenya shillings to the government. Now, the economy is expected to grow to 6.8% from 3.8% in the past year, whereby the COVID-19 pandemic really hit hard businesses and economies across the world. Not only that, Treasury is expected to raise the debt ceiling from 6 trillion, which was done 2 years ago, to 9 trillion, which is now expected to be the new ceiling when Parliament will be given heads up to discuss this particular motion. And I don't know, and I really do not understand if Parliament is going to agree in with the Treasury in order to raise the debt ceiling, because it is something that has raised uproar among the parliamentarians, some accusing the government of not telling Kenyans the truth of what exactly is happening into the Kenyan economy. Now, come June 2022, the budget should be fully implemented. The public debt is expected to rise by 900 billion, whereby now Kenya's total debt will be at 8.6 trillion Kenya shillings. Now, the stock of debt is expected to hit 10.6 trillion by the end of June 2025. This is how the economy currently is behaving in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic. The 2021-2022 budget has highly been criticized by some, and some are of the opinion that we can pass as it is, but something has to be done in order to cushion Kenyans. A few members of Parliament spoke yesterday. We'll be getting their review and hear on the second allotted day of budget discussion in Parliament how it went. Now, the budget breakdown on different arms of the government is something that many have been looking at. The judiciary, in particular, many people were coy on what exactly they would be allotted, and funny enough, they've been given an additional of 2 billion Kenya shillings, meaning that in this financial year, 2021-2022 budget, the judiciary will be having a budget of close to 17.92 billion Kenya shillings. Now, Parliament We'll be having 46.61 billion Kenya shillings. Remember earlier this week when Parliament was discussing the budget, many accused or rather threatened that they were to shoot down this motion and this bill in the event that the CDF kitty would not be released worth 11 billion Kenya shillings. But I do understand that 4.5 billion Kenya shillings was given yesterday, so they might be passing this bill and ultimately will be getting the finance bill 2021-2022 in check. Now the executive has 1.89 trillion Kenya shillings, the biggest expenditure, teachers being one of the heaviest spenders in the executive. Now bringing my guest in studio, Dr. Abdi Yaro from the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, former Deputy Governor Wajir County. You are the chairman of Abibsa. Ababsi. Consulting Group, yeah. Consulting Group. Right. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
We do have Deputy Governor Laikipia County, John Mwaniki on Zoom. We'll be joining him. What do you make of this budget? 3.66 trillion, 2021-2022.
Thank you so much, Clifford, for having me. Good afternoon to my colleague also, DG Mwaniki, wherever he is. It was, I think he's joining us online, isn't he?
Yes. He's on Zoom.
Yeah. Clifford, as you have aptly interpreted, you have really described what the budget we have for this financial year 2020-2021.
Yes.
And as you have said, it is the largest budget ever for Kenya. It's expected because budget normally grows every year. So it's expected to be more than what it was last year. Despite that, all over the world, we expect the budgets to be increased this financial year. Reason being, we are recovering from a recession.
We are recovering from a recession. Just hold it there, because I'm told we should be going to Parliament so that we can get the order of the day, because at 3:15 p.m. we do expect CS Ukur Yatani to stand before the parliamentarians, to stand before Kenyans and to read the budget. And right about now, let's go to Parliament. Let's listen into what exactly we expect from today's sitting. Then we'll be coming back and delve more into the budget 2021-2022.
Honorable Joseph Manche.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Speaker. My question is to the CS ICT Innovation and Youth. The first part, could the Cabinet Secretary provide an update on the status of implementation of the Kenya National Addressing System and the Communication Authority, which involves physical and electronic naming and numbering of buildings and streets? 2, what urgent measures is the ministry taking to ensure that institutionalization of the national addressing system is expedited? Thank you, Chair. Speaker.
The question will be replying to before the Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation. Next question by the member for Stare, the Honorable Charles Jagua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question 182 of 2021, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government. 1, could the Cabinet Secretary provide a status report on the investigations into an accident that occurred on 5th May 2021 near Pangani Girls High School along Juja Road, involving an ambulance registration number KCY 015S belonging to Medhill Group of Hospitals, which led to death of Peter Odur of National ID 2176-4388. 2, could the Cabinet Secretary undertake to ensure
the National Assembly getting the house in order so that 3:15 p.m. It will be the D-Day in the East and Central Africa, in the East Africa region. Budget is being read in 3 countries. That is Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania, where Rwanda this year will not be reading its budget. Now, DG Mwaniki from Laikipia County joins us on Zoom. John Mwaniki, good to have you. What do you have to say about budget 2021-2022, 3.66 trillion, and close to 75% of the revenue that will be generated is going to pay our debts? What does this speak of the economy currently?
Well, I think the first thing we must all appreciate as country is that, number one, we are broke, we are in debt, and the priority now is to figure out how do we get out of this debt quagmire. And therefore, any coin that we generate in terms of tax revenues must and should be dedicated towards getting into this debt quagmire. Now, two things should happen, or I'm expecting to see in the minister's proposal, is number one, on how to ensure that the debt that is very expensive, we have some borrowing from, corporate, commercial loans that are being retired. We have been able to renegotiate for these debts. And secondly, I also expect a focus on how to grow the economy so that then the taxpayers can have some money to pay, because government will only make money from the taxes. But what do I see is another attempt to try and focus on infrastructure. When you are in debt and you are broke, the last thing you want to do is start replacing your furniture, start buying new cars. So you are cut spending. You apply very, you are very alert and sensitive to unnecessary spending. Remember, this is the same year that we are expecting a lot of money to go to IEBC for purposes of preparing for the general elections in the year 2022 August, because they have to start procurement earlier. This is the same year that God knows what will happen to the BPI issue. So then we must ask ourselves as a country, what is now our priority? All these are nice things to have in an ideal financial year. What COVID has done and continues to ravage our country and the region at large and the world at large is that then you can't afford to have the same status quo as if everything is okay. Just like in the household level, parents now are having to adjust, employers are having to adjust, paying people who are still not able to generate enough income. So every sector of the economy, be it private sector, public sector, household level, is suffering. Even our, places of worship, they are no longer people being able to tithe and pay sadakas, as it were. So generally, as a government, the last thing we want to hear is from our treasury friends is that they are now talking about an ambitious budget. I expect them to focus on a real shoestring, cost cutting, savings, avoiding unnecessary meetings, spending on tea and mandazi should be a thing of the past. Fuel guzzlers running around should be a thing of the past. We must behave like people who are broke. Somebody who is broke doesn't afford to throw parties and party after party. Somebody who is broke actually looks for food that is necessary, basic food. So that's what I'm expecting to see this afternoon.
We'll be coming to you. Just hold it there. You were talking about Mr. Yaro about recession, and good that DG Mwaniki has brought up the election period that is ahead of us. It's 1 year and 2 months, and in our economy, every election cycle, the economy dips, then it will expand maybe in the subsequent years. Are we likely, what does this now mean for the inflation of the country, whereby 5.7 in the past year, this year, are we likely to see it go higher or come down?
Yeah, sure. If I start from where I began, you remember that last year the world economy contracted, including ours, almost -3%.
Yes.
And basically it was related due to the issue of the pandemic. And it was expected this year is a growth. That's why they are projecting 6% growth. 6.3% growth. And over the world, it's also projected that way. I will say also that the world economy, most of them now, they try to expand the economy so that they try to resuscitate the economy. That's what actually America is doing. You have heard about the infrastructure spending of Joe Biden. But these are for governments that are able. The governments that can raise money.
The big question is our government able?
Our government is not able. That has been actually described very well by DG Mwaniki. We are broke, and we are still thinking that we can do better. And then you brought the issue of now elections next year. We again expect the economy again to dip. So I don't foresee how even that 2 trillion that we expected to raise, that is expected to raise by KRA, how it's going to be raised. it's going to be very difficult.
Let's talk about the economy contracting, how government is going to generate its revenue. Yesterday in Parliament, actually 2 days ago, Parliament has been discussing budget 2021-2022. Others seriously raising issues on how the government's expenditure is.
Yes.
When we talk about us expanding the economy and not hurting the common mwananchi, whereby taxes will be increased, what is the best alternative to this?
It is a catch-22 situation, because if you want to expand economy, basically you have to collect more revenue, which means you have to tax people more. And now in this scenario where, you know, the common man is already burdened with the taxes, we have no option. Again, we have to borrow. Unfortunately, Kenyan economy is kind of consumer based. It's consumer driven. We focus so much on consumption rather than production. So what we actually, the government needs to do is to focus, to change this focus from consumption, because you can only spend when you have, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, if you focus on consumption and you have not generated what to spend, what are you going to spend? What the government needs to do is to focus, to change this focus to production economy. How can we do that? Assist in manufacturing, assist in the agricultural economy, you know, try to help these people to come up. But we are not doing that. What we are doing is just how to milk them so that we fund the consumption, the consumption economy that we are in.
Yes, DG Mwaniki, actually DG Mwaniki wants to react to that. And DG, if you can get me, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. I think I agree with Dr. because, you see, in fact, I wouldn't even call it that we are consumer economy. I would actually say we are a net importer. We believe in the importation of everything. I was just looking at last year's apportionment of the Big Four. And when you look at the percentage allocated to food insecurity and manufacturing, both combined were shy of 20%. But when you look at the infrastructure, a whole 47% went to infrastructure, where we need to move from brick and mortar and look at other new avenues. Now, speaking of is the expected 1.9 trillion in terms of revenue raised by KRA, I tell you that's going to be practically impossible. Why do I say this? Look, last financial year, or the current financial year ending this month, the Treasury had proposed tax on income, I think 1% or 1.5%, which since then the business community went to court and it's been suspended, meaning they were unable to realize their targets. I don't see any attempt to increase tax is going to be favorable to Wananchi. Because truth be told, Kenyans are bleeding from every corner because of heavy taxation. What I expect to see in the proposal again on this tax issue is an amnesty to those tax offenders, so that then they can be able to bring back their money to the country, they can be able to pay taxes, set aside those penalties and you know, all those things that KRA is fond of doing, because then what it's making is that instead of having self-compliance, it is actually brewing more and more of evasion because people are hiding away. But I wish the minister would at least offer, say, if you come forward and you pay your taxes, we will be able to set aside these penalties because we need to collect every coin that is available. Now, how do we grow the economy? The 6.3% projection of growth of the economy, it's not a tall order per se, because look at our Kenyan economy. It is driven mainly by three key sectors. One is the sector on agriculture, sector on tourism, and also sector on digital economy. Because truth be told, if you look at the number of internet access per guest on our population in the region and in Africa, Kenya is doing very well. We're actually the leading nation in this. So how do we encourage more and more production in the digital sector? Look at, and if you want to confirm, you can look at how much returns the Safaricom's are doing in terms of use of data, use of M-Pesa, and that's the area that we can look at. In terms of tourism, we must come up with a new order. How do we ensure that our tourism sector is back on its feet, even with the COVID era? Because COVID protocols, COVID is going to be here with us for a longer period of time. So we cannot walk around saying that COVID will end next month, next 6 months, or next 12 months. So we must assume COVID is with us here for the next 12 to 24 months. Then how do we then reactivate our business? If you look at the hospitality sector, that is a big employer, with this lockdown, with this curfew, the entire hotel industry has collapsed. Most people are jobless, and that is one of the biggest contributor to tax revenue. So I want actually to ask, how does the Treasury expect to fund a 3.6 trillion budget? That is why I said in my opening remarks that we must then see serious effort towards retiring expensive debt, serious efforts towards a very cost-cutting driven budget, serious efforts towards sensitivity in terms of unnecessary spend. Speaking of infrastructure, you see, we are in a catch-20, as Dr. said. You must complete the projects that are ongoing. If you don't complete them, then they don't give you the value intended. So that there is another quagmire that we must figure it out how to go about it. If you speak about counties, as we are speaking today, counties are owed more than 80 billion by Treasury in terms of delayed disbursement for the last 4 months. Now, as to whether that money is going to be forthcoming, only God knows, because Treasury accounts are zero. They're actually negative. Now, if you talk about CDF, you saw yesterday members of parliament saying categorically that they are grieved because the CDF money has not been dispersed, and therefore kids who are supposed to benefit from bursary and other interventions to schools, infrastructure has not been done. And all these things are coming together, and at the end of the day, we have a very bad situation. It must therefore come to realization. Then look at what sectors do we grow to be able to generate revenue. SME, for example, the microeconomy is completely dead. We must now be able to rejuvenate it, because without it, then we can't have. Look at the transport sector. When we say the transport sector, they have to minimize, limit the number of passengers. They have to, reduce where they can access. Therefore, it means less consumption of fuel. Therefore, less fuel tax. But I think one of the key solutions that is on the table for us is to have mass vaccination of our citizens. We are barely at 2%, 3% of the population. I wish we could be able to see some specific target or objectives or strategies towards ensuring that we have over 70% of the Kenyans having been vaccinated with COVAX. That way to be able to assume that the economy is able to go back on its feet quickly. Those are some of the things that I'm hoping the minister is about to tell us in the next few minutes.
John Mwaniki, for your sentiments, because they are really good. And he's talked about debts. We have projects to run and to fund before President Uhuru leaves office. We have the Big Four agenda. One of the major contributors to the growth of the economy actually should be manufacturing. But right now, as we speak, nothing is going on. Where exactly did we go wrong? Or rather, the Jubilee government, where did it go wrong?
That's actually where I was coming up with, what I was coming up to when I mentioned the issue of the production economy. What the Jubilee government needs to do, and we remember manufacturing was part of the Big Four agenda. But have you ever heard what has been done about it? Nothing. Basically nothing. We just sing the Big Four agenda, but basically nothing has been done.
Nothing.
Because that is where the government could have focused. Because you nurture these manufacturing businesses. Because you remember the way he is saying we are a net importer. Even toothpick we import. We cannot make anything basically. So if the government could have put more, focused more on this manufacturing industry, or those guys who are trying to manufacture something, maybe we could have done. You could be better, because we can produce. Once you produce, then you can tax people. But in this case, it's quite difficult, because the manufacturing industry is doing very badly. Any other production business is doing very badly. We were better off in the service industry, and that is before the pandemic. Now after the pandemic came tourism, health, transport, everything is down. So at one time I remember we were the best. We were generating a lot of money through the service industry. But now after the pandemic, everything has died.
Are we likely to see taxes being increased? Because this is one of the conditions that IMF has set when we were being given these loans that would cushion Kenyans?
Yes, I expect so. I'm a tax consultant. I have several clients who are already suffering with the taxes, payment of taxes. People are unable to pay their taxes basically because they cannot sell, they cannot be paid by the government. So they are in already liabilities. Now, and I expect the taxes will be raised from somewhere, because how else are they going to fund this? But whether they will realize that amount that they're going to raise is a topic for another discussion, for another day. But I expect they are going to raise some taxes somewhere, because they have to fund this.
They have to fund this.
Remember, there's a lot of debts. There's a lot of loans that IMF, we're also borrowing from IMF.
Yes.
And IMF will not just give you loans. There are certain things you have to comply with. And some of them is raising taxes, trying to maybe to ensure that out of this money we are giving you, how are you going to return them back? So I expect there will be some taxes to be raised. From 16%
to 18%, that is what the projections.
I don't think whether they are going to raise VAT, but they will try to, I'm privy to that, they are going to tax bread, which was not taxed before.
Definitely, that is what is going now to make everything go up.
So things like that will happen, but I don't think they are going to increase the VAT rate. So.
Let's talk about how last year's budget was done. And you find that health and tourism were the biggest gainers. It was in a midst of the pandemic. We are not yet out there. We are still in it. Where do you think now should CS Yatani focus on?
I expect the same will again happen, because he will try to resuscitate the hospitality industry, which has been in ICU for quite some time now. So we expect that he will bring some stimulus package or some incentives to ensure that to resuscitate those economy, especially also the health industry. Even though the benefit is still very low, because the people are still complaining, and of course you cannot satisfy everybody. But I expect that he's going to assist or to provide some packages, some stimulus packages, but we don't expect such a drastic measures that was done during the pandemic, because still we cannot afford. They cannot afford to do that. The moment you try to bring more incentives, like decreasing tax, reducing taxes and those things, it means we are going to be in a serious problem, because we are already broke. So that might not happen much, but there's a possibility that he might try to sugarcoat something for the hospitality industry.
And talking about sugarcoating the hospitality industry, the service industry, a lot is expected from CS Ukur Yatani, who will be reading his budget in the next 15 minutes. Already they are in Parliament, and some housekeeping already taking place there, and we'll be going there live to get to hear what CS Yatani has in store for us for this particular coming year, 2021-2022 budget reading. It will be historic. 3.66 trillion Kenya shillings will be estimated, where KRA will be bearing the burden to ensure that they collect this amount of money, where the government now projects that 2 trillion Kenya shillings is what KRA will be collecting come the next financial year, which should be read today. Now, members of parliament yesterday raised a few issues, where Garissa member of parliament Aden Duale accused the government, saying that there is something that they are not telling Kenyans on what exactly is happening to the economy. What is the way forward? Can CS Ukur Yatani resuscitate the economy with the 3.66 trillion? Now, the deficit of 1.6 trillion Kenya shillings, where will it come from? That is what we will be following up keenly. Now, John Mwaniki, Deputy Governor, Laikipia County, is on Zoom. And John, just to ask you, do you think this year's budget can strike a balance of post-COVID-19 economic recovery and driving President Uhuru Kenyatta's Big Four agenda ahead?
You ask me something that I already alluded to. I told you, when you are broke, you don't afford the luxury. There are things we must accept and come to reality that they're not going to happen. We may have a very good agenda of Big Four, but the reality is, where is the money to fund it? Right now, our focus is to pay our debt. Otherwise, we will default in the global market, and therefore we will be another Greece. Then we have the issue of being able to sustain our wage bill, because we have to keep our civil servants employed. Then we have the issue to deal with providing healthcare, which is a constitutional requirement for our citizens. So we are in little deep trouble. And I would be very surprised if I saw that we are just throwing numbers, because remember, last budget, CS Kuria talked about VAT refund of 10 billion. I tell you, nobody has received that money. We talked about giving credit guarantee of 3 billion. That money has not been dispersed. So it's one thing to read big numbers, mention good stuff there, but then it comes to implementation is very, very poor. And you see, last year we could forgive that COVID had just come in. It was not very clear how it was going to react, to behave. Now we have data to support and to be able to analyze and project the impact of COVID. So what I see is that we must accept that it's not possible to realize Big Four, as it were. We must now go back to the drawing board and actually talk about recovery. We are in recession. How do we come out of recession? We're not going to come out of recession by doing big projects, starting new infrastructure projects. If a road hasn't been done as of now, let it wait. After all, we have remained for many years without that road being upgraded. Why the rush to upgrade the road now? Let it can wait, because that's what's making us go out there in the market, borrow some expensive debts to come in. But those ones that are already ongoing, it only makes sense for us to complete them. I see we want to do big dams that some are even suspended, which is a good thing, yes, because we will be trying to inject irrigation for production in the agriculture sector. But then even that can wait. So right now we focus on what is already working to ensure that it doesn't die completely. One area that is of interest is the hospitality industry, because that's where we draw a lot of taxes from tourism, from hotel industry, from all this accommodation, entertainment. Then we must figure out how do you go about this in order to do it. The only thing I feel I might be wrong, but I highly doubt I'm wrong, is the ability for CS Ukuria to offer a stimulus package for businesses, because that package has to be funded. The funding is not there. I doubt how it's going. I tell you, when there was a lockdown of 1 month for the metro, the KRA lost 15 billion in 1 month only of lockdown. That tells you how significant and how heavy reliance we are as an economy on taxation. Now, speaking of whether there will be increase in taxation, I said that it will be very, very unfortunate to raise taxes any further, because the people you are actually going back to with an increase in taxes are the same Kenyans who have been bleeding all through. So it's important that we look at, can we go for other measures? For example, I talked about amnesty to those taxpayers who have been evading because they have huge penalties, they have huge liabilities with KRA, they are fearing by coming forward to self-declare, they will be penalized. So can we work out and say, look, if you come forward in the next 3 months, 6 months, pay your debt to KRA, we will not go after you, we will not charge you penalties, we will even give an external amnesty. Lots of people want to bring in their money into the country. They are fearing that they will be penalized. So these are some of the things that we are talking about. Companies that have been not able to pay their income tax because of various reasons, can we be able to accommodate them to ensure that we collect as much as possible without necessarily being punitive?
DJ, let me cut you short.
The issue of,
yes, let me cut you short because now we have to look at something else which is playing out here, whereby you are saying that we need to now focus our energy on the most important things, particularly suspending some of the projects that the government had initiated, some of the legacy projects that President Uhuru Kenyatta was looking forward to, ensuring that when he leaves office, Kenya will be in the best hands in terms of infrastructure. Now, county governments have been given 370 billion Kenya shillings. In your own opinion, the Deputy Governor, Laikipia County, would you say that this amount of money is enough to run the county governments in the next 12 months?
One thing I will tell you is that no money is enough. That we must agree. You only say that if you have 370, then you try and work around and budget for that 370. And as counties, our focus is to spend more money on resuscitation of the local economy. because that's what will actually generate production. So even counties have said, well, you know what, we can't go back to infrastructure development. Now we have to look at, for example, a rural county like Laikipia, how do we then invest in agriculture? How do we invest in trade? How do we ensure that the rural road connecting farm produce to the market is motorable? As to us, whether we are going to build new hospitals, build new classrooms, that can't work. And that's what I'm saying, that the president actually has done enough for his legacy. There is more. You can use your 10 fingers, you can count 10 more than 10 projects that actually define his legacy. So my appeal also to the president and his advisors is that, look, don't initiate anything that has not been initiated already. Complete what is already ongoing, so that then we try and be prudent, be modest in our spending. Otherwise, if we continue with our usual luxurious spending, big projects that groping all the money, then we'll bring the country to dry, and that's not what we want. We now need to focus on providing medicine in the hospitals to ensure that those who access the healthcare are able to find medicine, to be able to provide vaccine for our population, so that over 70-75% are able to be vaccinated in the next 3 months, so that then the herd mentality can be able to help us be able to move on forward in terms of economy. Our people are good, they're hardworking, they're producers. What we need is to support the small micro economies, because that's where we are going to generate more and more taxes.
All right, John Mwaniki from Laikipia County, the Deputy Governor, of course, they are giving us his sentiments and shooting on the hip on what exactly we expect in this financial year, whereby Ukur Yatani in the next 5 minutes or so, he should be standing before Kenyans and explain the 3.66 trillion. How exactly is going to ensure that this money gets into the pockets of the government and Kenyans at large? We are talking about the legacy President Uhuru Kenyatta wants to leave. It's a near and some 2 months to go. What is expected? Are we likely to see the debt ceiling now get raised? Because there are proposals already that Ukur Yatani will be going back to Parliament and request the members there to ensure that they increase the debt ceiling to 9 trillion, whereby already right now it's so scary for the economy of the country.
Sure, Clifford. That's the most unfortunate thing, actually, because remember, just in the midst of the last financial year, they raised the debt ceiling. And then now they are realizing again, this is not enough. We have to raise again the debt ceiling. It is very unfortunate, but I think the desire by the president to leave some legacy projects is really driving the country into, maybe could I say, not very right direction. Could not say wrong direction, but not very right direction, because definitely these projects need funding, and we cannot afford. We have borrowed so much. We have mentioned about our debt at the moment, and now we are going back again to the Parliament to ask for more. To increase again, to raise the debt ceiling, which is going to be again huge. So it's going to be very unfortunate for the government. I think what we could advise, maybe as consultants in this field, we could have told the president, please don't start another project. Let's see whether the ones which are already there can take us somewhere. Of course, they are good projects. Like we have seen the expressway coming up. They have seen some railways, whatever coming up. But I think maybe he started too late. Maybe could have. Was
it too late in 2013?
Was it really started in 2013? Because we have seen this in the last 1 year or 2 years.
No.
Was it there? Okay, there was the SGR.
It is not about the expressway. We are not talking about that. Let's talk about his vision when he came to power. And I'm sure by 2017, when he was looking to get back into the office, he already knew that the debt of the country is now going up from where former President Kibaki left him. I really don't understand if we can say that he started too late or too early.
Or we can say he was over ambitious. Maybe we as a country, we are over ambitious. And of course we were hit by the pandemic, which all over the world which was really hit, because maybe according to our forecast, Kenya's forecast was that these 5 years, the economy will grow comfortably at 7 or 8%. Maybe in that level we could manage. But now, having realized that this is not going to happen, then you need to downscale whatever you have envisioned through it. Maybe the government did not do that. After realizing that, yes, we really want to do many of these projects, but because of what has happened all over the world, we cannot raise this amount of money, we cannot afford. Then let us forego some of them. That could have been the best idea. But unfortunately, we are stuck in it. Some of it we have already been started. The way DG Moniki said, we have already borrowed, we're in the midst of it. You cannot stop it because you still have to pay for it. So
June 30th, actually, when you talk about the France loan that we were to pay, it should be, we were given a reprieve in January.
Yes.
And we were told by June 30th is when we were to pay those guys. Then now, we need to look at the best way possible. Which is it?
Okay, the best way possible, the way he has DG Moniki mentioned, is to cut now on as much as possible on the recurrent expenditure, to reduce the recurrent expenditure as much as possible. Remember the issue of these functions, this traveling. You see, in Kenya we spend a lot of money over issues which are, like, for example, we did the what is it called, the Baraka Day celebration in Kisumu. It could have costed the government maybe almost 500 million.
All right, just hold it there, Mr. Doctor himself. Mr. Abdi Yaro from the Ice Park, he's a member there. He's the chairman, Abipsa Consulting Group. It's a tax consulting group. But at exactly 15 minutes past the hour, let's go to Parliament, where CS Treasury Ukur Yatani is now talking to the public and explaining to the country why there's 3.66 trillion.
Statistical annex to the budget statement for the financial 2021-2022. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Right, 3.66 trillion Kenya shillings budget 2021-2022. Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani there reading his estimates, and definitely a few gainers and a few losers. As you know, the Big Four agenda has been one of the most anticipating moment that everyone has been waiting for, when President Uhuru Kenyatta will be leaving office come 2022. August 8th is when we'll be knowing if he's made through his legacy calls on the Big Four agenda, where 142.1 billion has been set aside, UHC getting 121.1 billion towards the implementation of the various health programs. Under the 121.1 billion, 47.7 billion has been set aside for the implementation of the universal health care. Affordable housing has been another key project that the president is working towards and its implementation in the next 1 year, and see if he can achieve a legacy there, where 49 billion has been set aside. And on manufacturing, 20.5 billion has been set aside. Agriculture has been allocated 210.4 billion Kenya shillings. Now, the NMS, which has been creating ripples among various leaders in the country, and there has been so much talk on it. It has been allocated, or rather 100 million has been set aside on the upgrade of the slum area, and 111 has been set to renovate foot bridges in the capital city. If you can remember so well, on this side of foot bridges, a lot needs to be done because proper demarcation on our roads need to be done. Now, the cumulative amount of money which has been set aside for the NMS is 27.2 billion Kenya shillings for the upcoming budget reading. Now, on taxation measures, a lot has been said, and a few exemptions, of course. Diapers importation has been exempted from customs duty. And also, just to take a look at some of the losers there, the betting companies have been hit by a 20% earning on excise duties. This is now the earnings which they collect cumulatively. Now, tobacco smokers, now this will not go well with you. They have been targeted a lot, and they will be a subject of excise taxation. Now, before I engage my guest, let me just look at some of the gainers here. The biggest gainer has been the Ministry of Health, of course. With the COVID-19 pandemic, the Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani has set aside a huge amount of money to be used in taxation, no, in immunization, and of course vaccination, where 3.9 billion Kenya shillings has been set aside to ensure that there is acquisition of the immunization program and vaccination. But the total amount of money there which has been allocated, I'll be telling you in a few. But here in studio, I still have my guest, Abdi Yaro, who is the chairman of Babsi Consulting Firm, which is a tax and audit. He's a former governor, Wajir, and he's a member of the ISPAC. I had John Mwaniki, whom I believe is not with us right now. Karibu tena, real quick, in the next 20 minutes we should be done with this. Who are the biggest gainers and losers?
Thank you, Clifford. You promoted me to governor. I was former deputy governor.
Former deputy governor. 2022,
maybe
inshallah,
I will be,
we should be having the
thank you.
seat.
Thank you so much. You have actually aptly analyzed what Ukur has been talking about.
Yes.
As you can see, the biggest gainers in this budget, first of all, is Parliament, which had got an increment of 25%.
25% is quite a huge amount of money.
Yeah, from 37 billion to 46 billion. Whether it is whether they deserve it or not is a subject for another discussion. Because most of those money is actually about for travels, allowances, and those things, because they don't have development expenditure.
Is it necessary right now?
To me, it's not. It's not. They don't deserve that, because why do you give to 800 people 46 billion shillings?
Yeah. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, because the whole of Parliament, the members of Parliament, plus senators, plus nominated, plus their staff is around 800 people. And you are giving them 46 billion shillings. A lot of money.
Is it a case of misplaced priorities, where we are talking about revenue collection vis-a-vis the expenditure?
It is actually a misplaced priority, but Parliament being Parliament, and holding the executive, in squeezing the government in such a way, they always get they always laugh to the bank compared to other people. Look at the counties. Counties also they are our biggest gainer. They got a 17% increment, but the budget is 370 billion. 370. Now you are talking about 370 billion for how many people in the counties? How many people are there in the counties?
Hundreds of thousands.
Not thousands, millions. We are talking about millions of people in the counties. Yeah, but for 1,000 people, we have given for 6 billion. But for millions, it's still not comparable.
It's not even comparable.
Yeah, it's not comparable. That increment of Parliament and the increment of counties, I wish that 25% could have gone to the counties instead of the Parliament, and maybe Parliament could have gotten an increment of 10%.
It is
Look at the judiciary. They have only gotten 1% increment.
1% of the increment.
So the element of the judiciary always crying that the executive is twisting them. There's some element of truth.
This is what exactly
if you look at the financials.
Let's talk about the Big Four agenda. It is 1 year before President Uhuru Kenyatta leaves office. 142.1 billion has been set aside. Is this enough?
Okay, first, before you go to the Big Four agenda, let me talk about the losers. The losers in this case is basically the taxpayers who have to bear this huge consumption budget of 3.66 trillion. Yeah, because they have to cough that money. We have to collect 2 trillion from them. Not even collect even the debt. We are the ones who are going to bear again, because we have to pay the debt. That's boring. So the biggest losers are always the taxpayers. As
we talk about the debt, June 30th, we should be paying some money to Paris Club Brothers. Do you believe we have something, we have the money to repay?
I think what the Treasury is trying to do is to close the all other beneficiaries, so that they pay the debt because they have no choice. And no wonder that's why maybe the counties are not getting money at the moment, because they are trying to accumulate the small amount that can be collected and pay the debt. They have to pay, and they can pay, they have, but at the expense of other vital services, like the services of the county. You see?
Yeah.
So coming back now to the Big Four agenda, you said 166, 142 billion has been set aside. I don't think that is enough. First of all, if you look at the whole budget, he said that 666 billion is for development. That is essentially leaves almost 3 trillion, because we are talking about 3.66.
Yes.
The other 3 trillion is all recurrent expenditure. Out of the 3.6 billion, out of the 3.6 trillion, 3 trillion is just for recurrent expenditure. 1 trillion goes to the payment of debt.
Yeah.
And the other 2 trillion is for the other recurrent expenditures, allowances, salaries, and wage bill. That doesn't help the country.
Yes.
So, so 140 billion is too small for the legacy project. So I am suspecting maybe along the way they might again start borrowing, and maybe also to do the supplementary budget.
Let's talk about affordable housing, which has been allocated 49 billion of the 142 billion.
Yes, that's part of the legacy project. This affordable housing, we have been talking about it, but up to now I really don't understand whether, have you seen many houses being built anywhere?
There's some in Gara, I've seen some, but I really don't think if they are worth this amount of money.
That is still too small, because this, you know, you are talking about housing even 1,000 people. It's really a lot of money. It needs a lot of money. So I think that could be sufficient, or somehow sufficient, let's say, if we can able to do it.
In driving the economy forward, we need manufacturing, where 20.5 billion has been set aside.
That could be a very good idea. Of course, we shall go and we shall look at the specifics. Where exactly is it going to help? Because you remember there's an importation duty that has been removed on diapers, and you wonder why don't you help these companies to set up manufacturing farms to produce these diapers instead of, because if you reduce the duty, yes, we need these things, but if you reduce the duty, basically it means we are going to import more. But it's a good gesture to put that 25 billion into the manufacturing industry, but still too low, too little still. Yeah.
Borrowing is good. We have not yet met the threshold. We are in the right gauges when it comes to borrowing. That is according to Treasury CS Ukuri attorney. True or false?
We have overborrowed. Everybody knows that. We have already overborrowed. Everybody. Okay, because he is saying we have not reached the ceiling, but you remember they are trying to raise the ceiling again.
Yeah.
Because, but he has no choice basically, because for you to fund such huge budget, you need money, and the easiest money you can get is borrowing. But the most unfortunate part is if this he mentioned about infrastructure bond and many other bonds that they are going to issue.
They are going to float.
To float. But it will depend where they are going to float these things, because if they do it domestically, it's going to lead to what's called crowding effect. It will crowd out the private sector from borrowing. That's going to be again a problem. It's going to be a huge problem again to the economy, because basically the private sector will not be able to compete with the government. Hence, it cannot borrow. So it will leave the economy in a problems again. But if he looks maybe outward, like the Eurobond and those things, even though I know there's a lot of politics around it, and he borrows from outside, it might help, depending also the interest. Also the interest charges from outside could be more, but we don't know. That could also assist. So borrowing is inevitable. We have to be prepared for that. But you see, the problem always people complain about is not about borrowing, is where this money is used. Because you remember people saying, even the president himself saying that people are stealing 2 billion shillings daily. So if we borrow to steal, surely, shall we reach anywhere?
What if we declare ourselves bankrupt?
No, that we can't do that. That's going to be too dangerous.
All right.
We go the Greece way. That will be very bad for the economy, for the image of the economy, for the image of the country. That will be blacklisted. You know, we cannot trade outside. You know, investors will not come. That has huge problems. So I think the best thing the government is to do is try to manage the expenditure.
One of the main problems that the CS has talked about is the pending bills. And he has issued until June 30th, when Parliament should be passing and directing all the departments in the country, in the government, to ensure that all pending bills be cleared by June 30th. Is this realistic?
If there is money, it will be realistic, but I don't know whether that money is there. You know, the problem of pending bills, why do we have even pending bills? It's just because of fiscal indiscipline. Because you have budgeted for this thing.
Yep.
Why are you not paying if you have budgeted for it? Why are you not paying? So it is basically indiscipline, because you budget for these things, and then instead of paying what you have budgeted for, especially that's what I've seen in the counties, instead of paying what you have budgeted for, you start spending things which you have not budgeted for, and ending accumulating pending bills. And this pending bills is a big problem, because it has really ruined the economy, especially in the small the SMEs. If you go to the counties, you will see somebody who has closed his hardware shop because he has given to contractors who have been given a job by the counties, and the contractors have not been paid. Therefore, he cannot replenish his stock. He has to close down. So it has really affected a lot of businesses in the counties because of this delay in pending bills, delay on paying pending bills. So if what he says is true and it happens, it will be very good for the economy.
All right.
Because we really want those trickle down effect. That money, payment of those pending bills go to the small contractors, and these people pay now the small traders, and the economy will wake up.
Talking about the economy, the CS has shown optimism that our inflation rate as of May 2021 was at around 5.7, 5.9 there. Are we likely to see the inflation rate go high?
Not really. The economic forecasting show that it will remain stable between 5.7 to 5.9, maybe an increment of 2% on that. Essentially, this is basically because we don't expect the prices to go up, and we don't expect even people to buy, because people do not have money in their pockets. So even if you raise prices of goods, you know, it might not people cannot afford to buy. So we expect the inflation rate to be stable for the next 1 year. Maybe an increment of 2 or 3%, but as we go towards election, definitely it will go up because of election money going to be in the market most likely.
Yes, and definitely it's projected that our GDP come next year might be around 5.5% because of the election. And if you look maybe in the previous years, when we had the elections in 2012, our 2012-2013, our GDP was at around 5.9%. In 2017, it was at 4.8%. In 2020, because of COVID-19 pandemic, our GDP was at 0.6%.
Historically, during elections, our economy normally contracts, because you understand, you know, African elections, there's a lot of instability. So there's people fear post-election violence. Investors will not come. There's issue of insecurity. You know, people fighting and those things. So it's expected. That's expected.
It's expected. 450 million shillings for radiotherapy acquisition of equipment.
Good. He mentioned several exemptions on the pharmaceutical industry. Basically, to try to help. The issue of this COVID-19, you remember the issue of lack of oxygen, gas masks. He mentioned all those things. He said there'll be exemptions all on that. That's a good. A point in good direction, because essentially he's trying to mitigate the effects of this COVID-19, which will be good. I think those are good gestures.
Those are good measures. Before we wrap up, I do have close to 9 minutes to go. What do you make of this budget reading now? Cumulatively, where is Kenya headed economically?
Okay, we analyzed this, and we said earlier that the budget is fairly big, the largest that we ever had, and this was expected because every year the budget normally goes up, and it's a recovery project. That's how normally it's dubbed. It's called a recovery budget. Yeah, a recovery budget because it's post-pandemic. And we hope that we will be able to collect the revenue that we anticipate to collect. That's about 2 trillion. 2 trillion, which is going to be very difficult, because we haven't seen any increment in taxes. We have, apart from reintroduction of that excise duty on betting, we haven't seen any much changes in taxes. So it's going to be a tall order for KRA to collect that money. especially if there's going to be again lockdowns and these things. But hopefully, if there will be no lockdown, and the effect of the pandemic is mitigated through vaccinations and the like, there is this element of now people really wanting to come up and go out and do business and make money. So that can help us in one way or the other. On the issue of recurrent, the issue of the recurrent expenditure, it looks like the government has done nothing about it because it's still very huge.
It is huge.
It's still very huge, and that is very unfortunate because we expected very various cost-cutting measures, because he hasn't mentioned much. He hasn't mentioned much various cost-cutting measures that will mitigate this recurrent expenditure. So unfortunately, that is where maybe I think there is we can say there is a bit of problem.
Now, on the medium-term budget, he has shown optimism of 6.1% growth in our economy.
This one is if it remains, if we remain hopeful the way we are now in the issue of the pandemic and the likes and no much election, scabbers and the like, we hope that this is achieved. This is achievable. 6.1 is achievable, but it depends with now what will happen. If the pandemic comes back and again those lockdowns happens, we cannot achieve that 6%.
The 20-point-something billion set aside for vaccination, and
it was 3.9 billion. Around there.
Is it enough?
It's not sufficient. It's not enough. But Kenyans, I think we are maybe relying on some donations from well wishers. So, but that's not enough. That's not enough, and fortunately, we are not very much affected with this COVID. Okay, we are affected, but compared to this huge economies like America and Britain, those guys really got a big hit. Maybe God loves us so much because He knows that we cannot manage this huge
this kind of problems.
So I think because of that, we are still surviving, and we hope to survive. So the 3.9 billion is a good gesture also. At least we are putting some effort. And I think we will also benefit from what the world powers will do to assist to mitigate this pandemic all over the world. But before I go, one thing that I really want to emphasize, Clifford, we don't have a revenue problem. What we have in Kenya is a spending problem. We have fiscal indiscipline. We want to live large. We want to spend what we don't have. You see, if you are earning 100,000 shillings and you are spending 200,000 shillings, you know that you are going to land in problems. That's what's happening to Kenya mostly. So I think Kenyan policymakers should sit down and really concentrate and see how to avoid this living large.
Let's talk about it's a year to the elections, and one arm of the government and department that will be in focus should be the IEBC. Has justice been done to them? Because I do believe that we cannot be planning about the elections maybe 3 months to the election.
Maybe I missed it. I didn't heard what has been allocated to them. Did you have you captured anything?
No.
We missed it. Maybe we'll find it later. I suppose that justice has to be done to IEBC if they are to do a good job. If they are to do a good job, or I don't know whether they are because maybe they will give them more money in the next budget because the election is but they need to prepare, and for them to prepare they have to be given money. And we haven't even had any money for referendum, so I don't know what will happen to the BBI thing. Because
actually that is one thing he spoke about, and it will play a bigger role in shaping the implementation and the collection of revenue in the country. In your own opinion, should we go ahead with this BBI thing? Because a lot has been said, and we know, of course, from today, politicians will come and say that, you know what, we need a referendum before August.
Before August.
Yes.
Surely, I don't know how we are going to go about it, because, for example, if you want, if you are hungry and you want food and you want something else, some other luxury, because I consider BBI as a luxury. Will you go for the food or you will go for the other one?
You go for the food.
Yeah, so me, I think if we can shelve the VBI issue and forget about it, and we do after next election is better.
It's going to mess up the handshake, you
but
know, so and
that's where the problem is now. This is political thing. So maybe politicians will come together and manage to find out how to fund these things. So they will find a way. They will always find a way.
They will find a way. Now, one final question before we wrap up this whole special broadcast has been, where are we getting it wrong in terms of tax collection in the country? Yesterday, there was a lot of debate in Parliament where the government has been accused that it is not helping KRA. It is not giving it the necessary support that it requires. Because if we are talking about 3.66 trillion, the buck stops with the Revenue Authority in the country.
I have been working there before, and I know the problems these people face. First of all, Kenya Revenue Authority is entitled to 1.5%. I think now they have increased to 2% of the revenue collection. Unfortunately, they are not given that amount of money. That's already too little. You know, KRA collects money and it doesn't have a bank account. The money goes directly to the central bank. So they beg the central bank to give us the money so that we collect for you more. Unfortunately, they have not been given a good ear because they really need to fund KRA very well for them to collect, because they don't have the capacity. If we are thinking of expanding the tax base where we feel that there's a lot of revenue leakages, then we need more people, more resources. We need more technologies to ensure that we go after all this, to ensure that we capture everybody into the tax bracket. So I think the Treasury needs to do more for KRA. It needs to do more for KRA. I'm not saying so because they are my colleagues before, but really they really need.
Are you optimistic? One final question. Are you optimistic that this 3.66 trillion will be achievable?
It depends. It depends with how we are going to implement. It depends with where we are going to press the right button. If we raise the right button, I think it's not difficult. We can manage it.
We can manage it. Yeah. All right, 28 minutes past the hour. This has been the special broadcast over budget 2021-2022. And definitely, I've been your host, Cliff Ondubi. My guests have been Abdi Yaro, who is the chairman Abab C Consulting Firm. It is a tax and audit firm. He's a member of the ISPAC, the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya. The former governor, Wajir, right?
I say repeating governor, deputy governor. Former deputy governor.
Former deputy. Former deputy governor. And of course, my deputy governor from Laikipia, John Mwaniki, who has taken us through various insights on the budget 2021-2022. I've been your host, Cliff Ondubi, and a special thank you to Lincoln Wambugu, who's been the producer of this particular broadcast. Dede has been my director. Do have a lovely evening and keep watching Switch TV at 7 p.m. Through to 8:30. We shall be having a comprehensive broadcast on budget 2021-2022. Sakwa Bunyasi, member budget and appropriation committee in Parliament. Millie Odhiambo will be here, and we'll be having someone else. Mary Nkadha, I believe, from ISPAC also will be here to give us more insights on what exactly budget 2021-2022 means to you. Thank you for watching Switch TV.